Hi, in this session we want to write the code that is for moving the player in the 3D world. We use new input systems so you can both use it on mobile or on PC and also on different devices. So make a joystick like this or any type of them if you want. One of them for movements that would be put on the left side of the screen and one for the camera look which you put on the right side of the screen, which, for example, you don't need to add this triangle and you can have something like that and use some arrows to say, okay, this is for rotating the camera. I brought those pictures that I have exported as PNG and brought them here, but now they look weird. So go here and select the Sprite 2D and UI because we're going to use them as the UI. Okay, so you see them here. Now we need to install some packages. Go to Window, Package Manager, go to first one, and we want Cinemachine for camera. We can go and say Input System, which is in the new input system, and install that. Say yes, but it restarts your editor. Okay. Now it has been restarted. We can close that and then go here, right click, go to UI and make a panel. We go here and I think it is at this side. Yes. Can go with the scale with the screen size. We want that our game be full HD. So write down that value there and bring it this. And yes, here you see that the canvas is fixed to this game, but here you see that it is very big. But don't worry, just select that. So this white line is your canvas. Okay, you can make your panel, for example, uh, smaller as you see here. I put it on the left because I want that to be panel right, which is for movement, and I make a image which is this. I call it left stick or joystick, something that you know. Okay, I just give that this image, set to native size. Yeah, that's fine. And I decrease the opacity so it wouldn't obscure what I see. And then I go here and the opacity of the panel itself would be gone. So I have something like this. And again, if you think that is too small, you can increase that size. And then I go to, let's duplicate that, panel left. And don't forget to dock that to this part. So control, press control, it will appear and it will be docked here. And the left, go here and control and put this one so it is docked here. It means that in every devices, it tries its best to go into that part. So, and this is, I think that I brought it wrong. Okay, I just changed the name. Left. This is right. And And this is the right stick for example, the camera on the phone. You can use that to rotate the camera. And this uses this one. Okay, folder for scripts, and go to create input actions. I think that you don't see this because it is two in the bottom of the scene. So it's called input action, and this would appear. And I say, okay, player manager or input manager, anything that is okay. And I open that and I create an action map. I use this because I want, for example, for the PC, for the mobile, I just have one central controller. So if I use different devices, even the Xbox and mobile, everything, they just I use the same code for all of them. So the action maps, I call it player, and in a new action, I call it move or movement. Delete that. And here, the type should be value because we want to value. For example, for the X, when you move to right, the X is positive. When you go to left, the X is negative. And also, mm, for example, for the Y, you go up, the amount is 1. So you're working with the value. And this is vector 2. And for the binding, press on the plus. Don't add the first time. Add the second one. WSAD. So for up, for example, let's say W on the keyboard. For the down, go here. Just on the keyboard say S. And this is keyboard. For the left, it is A. For the right, go here and press D. What happened? Yes, this is D. You can also do that for the arrows on the keyboard. And that's the same thing, you just need to add the other buttons. Also, this is for the keyboard. We want to make something for this joystick, or virtual joystick. So I go to add binding, and I say gamepad, left stick. Okay, and then this would be added. And also we want to add an action for this. So the camera would look around. So I add a new action and call it, for example, look. This is a convenience name that most developers use them. And it is also the value vector 2. And for the binding, I say the right stick. Okay, gamepad. And also I want that my mouse also work on that. So here I add another binding and call it delta pointer, which is for the mouse. So if I rotate that, the camera would move as well. Now I save it. For different things, we gradually add them. But now we have these two things. Now I go here and I add on screen stick, and this was what was the gamepad, left stick, and the movement range. For example, let me show you. For example, this is this, but if I make it very exaggerated number and select that, it moves a lot. But 100 is good for both for the PC you don't use that, but for the mobile this amount is good. Now we go to right stick And we can do that on a screen stick, and we give it the right stick. I have to do one more step. So go here for the Cine Machine, free look camera, add a component, and call it his input provider, a Cine Machine input provider. And here for XY axis, go here and give your look action. And we don't need to add anything here. And you should see, okay, who to what it should look at. Okay, and I say, where's my player? Here. And I say, okay, look at the player. But the problem is that as the pivot point is here, the camera always will look at his feet. So I make another game object, and I say, okay, camera follow, and I move the pivot point upward. And then here, okay, instead of this player, I say, okay, follow this that has this anchor point. So, or pivot point. So follow that. And also, it means that, for example, whenever on the XY you move, but for rotation, we want that okay. And also look at this one. Not only follow, but rotate around that one. So we give this and this. Now if you look at that, it would be something like this. But it is there, it's like a headache, especially on the mobile. Um, Controlling the camera is very, very hard if you left that to this. So we go to this part, when the camera look at you from here, it is top rig. The middle rig, it is here, and the bottom rig, it is here. So you have to create a balance between, I think that you have to make these values for the top rig, middle rig, and bottom rig. For the height, it's better that they be very similar. The radius, I think 4 is good. For example, I'd rotate that around 4 meters away. And the height, okay, I just make this. Very slight changes. They're somehow at the same level. You can change these values according to your need, but I think that it is good and it doesn't give headache. Here, do you see that how fast it is rotating? You can go to the x-axis and the speed and decrease the speed. And I have tested my previous projects, and 200 is usually a good value. Go here and add a component, player input, and here for the actions I add this. Yeah, if I only have player, so I call it folder and I say, okay, this is for player, and I say player movement. Now that I play the game, you see that there's a problem. When the cursor goes to right, the camera goes to left. And when my cursor goes to left, the camera moves to right. It kind of works in a reverted way. I go to left, it goes to right. I go to right, it rotates to the left. So to fix that, go to your player manager input action, and on the look, on the processor, press plus, and say invert vector 2D just on the y-axis, and save that, and now play the game. Now I go to right, it moves to right. Now I go to left, it is the camera also goes to left. No, that is fixed. Now as we are here, let's go and add the jump button as well. We go here, we have a new action and I call it jump. This is not a value. You just press a button and it jumps. It's not like them that they are value, okay? This is a jump and you can bind, for example, I say to a space bar or write a space on a keyboard. And you can add, for example, mm, and also have a UI and I connect that to this. You can add other things, for example, for the gamepad and see what would work. For example, bottom south, bottom north. You can add that. But now let's delete that. And we have this. And you can say also, okay, press. Okay, when you as soon as you press that, it will jump. But it's a release. It means that when you release the button, it will jump. And here, in both ways, it does that. But once that's okay, when I press that, it would work. We have here, and I also want to add the sprint, or when he wants to run faster, I add that. So I say sprint, or maybe I'm saying the opposite, the sprint. Okay, we assume that this is fast run. Okay, say run fast. And also this is a value, call it any, it's not important. And for that, usually they press shift. So, okay, in the shift of the keyboard, it would then do that, and you can also add bind to new different things as well. And we have jump, we have this. For the movement, I think they are enough. Okay, and save that. If you want to move your character in the 3D world, there's something that is called character controller. Add that and then adjust the size. The good thing is that if you have that, you don't need to have rigid body or you don't need to have a collider. It does everything. It just makes you move and you can apply gravity directly to that. And also it has a built-in collider as well. Just make sure that you perfectly um, adjust that to the size of this character. So, for example, the radius would be this, the height, bring it on the y-axis. Can increase that if you want. Okay, now we have this. We go to your code, and here we want to get that component, which was the character controller. And we say, okay, character controller, this, and then I say get component is equal to yes to that. And here we need different parameters, for example, the speed that the character wants to move. So I go here and say serialized field private, so like you can directly change that in the inspector if you're not satisfied with the result. And I say speed, for example, it equals to 4. And for fast running or sprinting, I can okay int, for example, fast run multiplier. It means that when we are running very fast, we need to, for example, if I say 2, we double this one and we move faster. You can make it a float if you want that number wouldn't be a whole number. And also, as we want to give the gravity here, so I say private float gravity, which is, if your physics is good, you know what is that. And Oh, so yes, you want to say if it is a sprinting or running fast. So I say private pool is running fast. Okay. And also we need another one for when we want to jump. We want to check that if it is grounded. We need another variable for jumping, say private float, um, jump height. For example, this is 2f. We can change the jump later if this is too low or this is too much. And okay, let's go here and write the code. Here, we want to directly use these actions. So if the naming is not equal to some the name that we want to use here, then let's go to the player. Then the player input cannot recognize that. So if you want to use this player input, we have to use exactly this name in your code. But we would add on. For example, we say on move, on look, on jump. Okay, so it is on move, for example, let's say private void on, and it was move. Okay, oh, what is that? On move. All right, and it expected us because this is the value vector 2, then we have to pass to this one. Here we say input value input. It just gets the raw information about the direction of the movement from the player on the, for example, the joystick or the keyboard. So vector 2, and we say input, for example, vector is equal to input that get, sorry, just get vector 2. So what does it mean? Here it wants to get the x and y value because it's a vector 2. And the x is for horizontal movement. For example, when the player goes to left or right. And the y is for example, for the depth, if it goes forward and if it goes to backward. Okay. So imagine that we go to the player goes to right, then it would be 1 and 0. 1 on the x and 0 on the y. Also, yeah, so usually in the 2D game, y is the vertical movement, but in the 3D, it means forward and backward. And there's no z. Okay, we don't have z. So we somehow need to convert this vector 2 to vector 3 because this is a 3D game and there is 3 axes. As you see, the green one is y, the blue one is z, and the x one is the red. And by vector 2, we get the information for the x and z value. That actually the y value is, we want to put that in the z value. Okay, so actually the y here, the y, it is not actually this y. Okay, so something like that. So let's go here and say private vector 3 because we want vector 3 because it's 3D world, and say move direction, and here we say move direction is new vector 3. Okay, we say have your x, which is the uh, input vector that x. You see that we want x, y, and z. Okay, for the y in the 3D world, it means that vertical movement up and down, for example, when it wants to jump. As we want to move direction and we don't want that the player goes up, so we leave it to 0. And for the z, we want the y value. Okay. Yes, this is the x, this is the y, and this is the z in the 3D world. And here, don't forget to add the normalized. So in every direction, the speed would be the same. Otherwise, in diagonal movements, the speed would be more because both the x and y would attribute to, for example, to make the speed more. The next function is, okay, the run fast. Because now let's go and do for the moving. Um, so I say private void. When I say on, run fast. Because I think, yes, it was run fast, so I say on run fast. And it is the value. So I say again, say input value. Put value. Input. Just want to check that if the, what is that? If the player has pressed, for example, on the shift key and the player should run fast, and something that we have the boolean here. So here we say, okay, if it is true or not, say input dot is pressed. As long as this is pressed and I press the shift button, then this is true and the player runs fast. But if I don't press, it means that, okay, it is running fast is false and it moves with the ordinary speed. Now we have jump. Let's go and write the jump code and say on jump. It's a button, it doesn't have any value. And you want to change the velocity of the player on the y-axis. So I say private vector 3, for example, player velocity. Okay, we want to change that on the y value. And I say that y dot math f dot square jump height in -2 in gravity. You may say, what is this? This is actually this. So this is equation, okay, that you have initial velocity and you have this, and -2 is a value that doesn't change, and this is a gravity, and the s is actually the jump height. For example, if your jump height is 5 and gravity is -98, 9.8, then okay, you put that in this equation, and then, for example, the character goes upward with this unit per second to achieve 5 units jump height. In order to avoid spamming the jump, we want to make sure that if this is grounded, it means the player touched the ground and then it can jump. And for checking if it is grounded, we say, okay, player controller, player, what was that? Character controller. So that is grounded. You see, that is very simple. We don't need raycast, you know. So character controller really make things very easy. Okay, and now imagine that the player has fallen from something and okay, and it is grounded. What? And the velocity, player velocity, that's y is less than 0. It means that it is falling. We want to keep that um, grounded so it wouldn't float into the air. So we say velocity, that's y, is equal to, we give it this value a little bit less than 0, because if you say 0, it might, for example, be a little bit off the ground, be kind of floaty. So we want to make sure that we give it a slightly more less number, that we make sure that the player is keeping grounded. Now in update function, we want to check, okay, if the player is moving with a constant speed, it was the normal speed, or for example, I say normal speed, or this is sprinting and running fast. So here, for example, I say float speed, and I say if is running fast, if this is that, in that case, the speed is the normal speed multiply by the fast multiplier, which is 2. We say, okay, um, let me say that, else the speed is just the normal speed. So if you go in a normal way, the speed is just, for example, 4. What we're running fast, it would be 4 into, and the speed would be 8. And we later add the animation related to that. Okay, now we go to the actual movement. For example, we say F vector 3 moving. So do you remember that we now have the directions? We say movement direction in speed. That is, we have, okay, something like that. And time, that delta time. And now we use a character controller, or yes, to move. Just that's move. This is moving. So that code is actually responding for the actual movement of the player. Let's go and test the game. I give the code to the player. So don't forget that both of them should be applied. And now I go forward, backward, and this is not rotating towards that. For example, I go left, it should look left. Yes, I know it doesn't have animation, but the character should look at the direction that it goes. And also, um, the gravity is not applied. If I put it here, it doesn't fall down. So we have to also fix that. Update function, here, we first want to check that if the player is actually moving or not. So I say if move direction is not vector 3, that's 0. Because if this is vector 3, that's 0, it means that, okay, it's not moving. It doesn't have any direction. But if it has, then it has to rotate towards that direction. So I say quaternion, that is related to, rotating, something like that. And I say rotate, for example, and say quaternion dot loc rotation. Okay, we say, okay, to the move direction, and make sure that it is vector 3 up. It means that on the y-axis, transform that rotation is equal to quaternion, that's lerp, because for when you're using lerp, it smoothly goes from, for example, point A and to point B with the, for example, it takes 1 second to go from point A to point B. So it creates a smooth movement. And okay, for example, you have that, your rotation, okay, to where? Where is your destination? And I say, okay, the place that I want to rotate towards to. And I have time, the delta time, and I have a speed for this rotation. For example, I give it 10F. You can change the value. Okay, now we're inside the game. Now the player looks toward where we want to go. For example, I want to go forward and I go to right and I go to left. His face rotates towards that. And I think the speed is good. Or we can increase that a little bit more. Make it serialized field so we can change that. But as you remember, we had another problem that the player was not grounded. It was in the mid. If I brought it in the mid-air, it wouldn't fall down. Let's write a code for that. So I think I put it here. It is better. So if the rest of the code is not executed, at least that one is executed. So now I say velocity, player velocity. I'm sorry. That's y plus equal to gravity in time dot delta time. So the gravity would apply to my player height, and then our controller should move as well. And I say it was play character controller. That's move. Okay, with the plus velocity in time, that's delta time. And I can jump, but we only need to give the animations. So this is fixed and it falls down at the animation. So I say private animator anim. Okay, there is the animator. This is a code, but the animator is on the child of this game object. So I don't say get component. I say get component in children. Where is that? Yes. And then animator. Okay, and now let's go and make the variables. It was there. The animator. Okay. For movement, we add the boolean and call it, for example, run. We have walk, but let's not add that. And you say fast run or sprint. They are boolean because as long as the condition is true, we want that, for example, it runs. But for something that is just is applied once, for example, when you attack with your sword, it's just happened once. If you click for per click, you have one attack, so you use trigger for them. But now we just add these three things because this session is about movement, and I also you can make the jumping as a boolean, but okay, just make it trigger and I say jump. And now put that aside. And it doesn't have exit time. Here I say the transition would be not a lot because I want that it fastly changes the animation. But don't say completely zero, because from idle to slow, there would be nothing in between. And it sharply goes from idle animation to, for example, running, and would be very unrealistic. But by giving some transition, the animation in between is transitions from idle to slow run, and it is more natural. And here I say, okay, the running is true, and here the running is false. And also here the running is true, the fast run is true, and here the fast run is false. And where is the jump? Okay, this is the jumping, and as it is trigger, it should not be looped. For 3 years from any state, I say, okay, um, this is that, and I go to jump, and then return to idle. So it must have exit time. And this means, for example, if you say 9, it means that 90% of the animation is shown. And no condition, it just have exit time and just returns there. And now we go here and remember the name. Even for example, if it is capital R, it should be exactly like that. So it is run, fast run, jump. So if it is running fast, then we say anim that set ball. Let's run fast, right? Fast run, I'm sorry. It would be true. Otherwise, it is false, and just a normal run animation would be true. Actually, it's better that I check if the player is even moving. If it is not moving and has a stop, then the player should return to idle. I bring this one up here because all of these things should happen when the player is moving. All right, and then we say else. So here I go and say run is false, but here this is true. And in else, both of them must be false because the player is not moving and it has to return to idle. Now here it goes and it sprints. And let me see if I can make it faster. For example, I give exaggerated number. You see that it works. You can also change the speed here because I think it runs like in movies. Which one was that? Matrix? I don't. So I also, if I want to do that, I also need to fast multiply by 3. You see that the player doesn't move according to the cursor, which is really annoying to control the player. So let's fix that as well. But before that, I think I forgot to give the animation to jumping. So I say anim. That's set trigger because it was a trigger. And I say jump. Okay. Yes, it would work, so we don't go there to check that. But before that, we want to check that we can somehow control the player movements with our mouse as well. Okay, to make the player to follow the cursor or the camera angle, then we have to do some extra steps. Here we want to get the camera. Serialized field, private, transform, camera position, and update method when we want to move. What's that? Here. Yeah, before that, we want, okay, it just gave the move direction according to the keyboard. But I want that also for the cursor or the camera also works. So here I say vector 3 to get the forward and right part of the camera. So I say camera position dot forward and vector 3 right, and I say camera position dot right. Also, I don't want that's, for example, it follows the camera on the y-axis and it go upwards. The player, I don't want that it goes to the upward direction. So I make sure that the y value is 0, and I also normalize that forward. Let's normalize. Sorry, just this normalize. Wait, normalize. And also for the right, I do that as well. Now we want that the player moves according to the camera, so I have to somehow give this value, which is for the camera position, the forward and the right one, and somehow insert that to the unmove um, that we have moved direction here. It gets from the keyboard. Now we want that the cursor also have direction in that. So we're going to combine this and something that we had in here. So we have another value and say vector 3. Okay, move with camera angle, for example. And I say, okay, forward. Let me put them both in parentheses in um, this one, Control C, that's Z, and also the right, which is for the moving to left to right, should be in move direction, that's X. So I have to say equal. And don't forget that it is normalized. And I move it here. Okay, move direction, no. Move it camera. And I also, for the look rotation, instead of that, I say this. And also for the gravity, as we have checked for that, um, it's better that we move that down, because on the slopes and angles, it would do a strange behavior. Okay, and now in the code, I gave the main camera here. It moves when I put the cursor here. It also moves here. If I move the cursor here and I only press W, you know, it responds to, I only press in W. I'm not pressing anything. And when I move the cursor, the player faces that direction. And that is better. If you feel that the jumping is floaty and you want to make it, for example, as soon as it jumps, it comes down so it wouldn't stay in the air, you can go and change the gravity and make it more, for example, this value. Also, I think that if you want to have two jumps animation. For example, one, when he is not moving, he has a jump, a normal jump that we already have. But when it is moving, we want that um, it has another kind of jump. We can go to mixsummon.com and, for example, select those things that are good for running and jumping at the same time. For example, I love this one. So here is the animation as a refresher. I tell you, okay, again, we say create from other assets because we have this, and we put the avatar here and say apply. And for the animation, this is not looped as it is a trigger, but we say, okay, original, back to pose, original, and also this. And we hit apply, and then in the animator, we add this, and I add another trigger and say, for example, run, jump, and we, where is that? Okay. This is the run, jump. I make it 0 because I want that it would be applied soon, but when it is going down, this amount is good, so it has time to have this something between this animation and this animation, so it would be more smooth. So we have this, and now let's go to our code on jump. Okay, here I say if um, something that we had here, move direction is not equal to, so you say if this is equal to 0 and we're not moving, show this animation, else what was the name of the trigger? It was run jump. That's it, and now let's go and try that. So here is a normal jump. That's weird, you know. If you, for example, have the animation, for example, from Mixamo, that makes a character also to move and then back to your pose, then select your animation. That was the flip, yes, and uncheck that, and then it is fixed. So it's something like that, and they exactly work like that, and it doesn't return it. But if you just say something like this and select that, it would be weird. It goes there and it returns. You see that? For every animation that you have that problem, just uncheck that. You can click apply, and then it would work just fine. So practice well and see you next time. Bye bye.